Welcome to our latest 76 Capital Leadership Series. I'm your host, Wayne Kimmel, and managing partner of 76 Capital. I'm really excited to have you on our show today. It's going to be a great one. You can find me on Twitter at Wayne Kimmel. Please reach out anytime and follow all the things that we have going on at 76 Capital. I'd love to hear from you and hear all of your thoughts and all the things that we have with all the different guests we have. You know, on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, it's produced each week and by my chief of staff and producer of our show, James Santor, who you can follow him at James Santor 76. He's a great follow as well. Someone that you want to definitely check out all the things that he's doing at James Santor on Twitter. So on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, we bring on the top sports business executives, leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes to talk about all the new things, all the emerging things that are happening within the sports betting, the esports world, the sports marketing world, the sports media world, all the things that are happening, all the next things. That's what we're all about bringing to the forefront on this show. Because also at 76 Capital, we're about working with people that are passionate, that are smart, that are nice, and want to change the world within sports. That's what we're all about. So we want to hear from you. We want to talk with you. We want to hear about, hear from you and hear your ideas as an entrepreneur, as a business that you think you could do something with some of our current portfolio companies. Let us know. Follow us at 76 Capital on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, Instagram. We're excited to talk with you and hear about all the things that you have going on in your world. And hopefully we can find ways to work together and make this world a better place. Well, let's get right to it. Today's guest is Molly Arbogast. I mean, Molly is a friend. She's someone who we're super excited to have on the show. She's the president and CEO of POV Sports Marketing. Molly, you can follow Molly on Twitter at Molly Arbogast 1. Definitely check out what she has going on as well as what they have on their Twitter channel for POV Sports Marketing. I mean, Molly is a sports marketing expert with more than 25 years of experience on the team and property side of the business. Her firm, which is, again, POV Sports Marketing, specializes in working with brands, properties to structure effective, creative sports sponsorships that will exceed expectations and objectives and results for all the companies and clients that she has. She has some amazing clients, and we're excited to talk to her about some of them. Molly has worked with a number of incredible brands, as we said earlier, whether it's in her career, whether it was with the Philadelphia Eagles, Learfield, the NBA, WNBA, Palace Sports and Entertainment, and IMG. Molly is, someone in the sports marketing world that you need to know. She was recognized by the Sports Business Journal as a game changer honoree, as one of the top 40 women in all of sports. So definitely excited to have her on the show. She graduated from honors from St. Lawrence University with a double major in government and Spanish. She's a Chicago native who now lives out in the suburbs of Pennsylvania with her husband and two sons. She's right outside of Philadelphia. We'll be talking to her about all the cool things that she does within the Philly area as well from a marketing perspective. So at this point, I really like to bring on, my friend and someone I'm really excited to have as a guest. Molly, welcome to our show.
Great to be here. Wayne, I don't know if I've ever had such a great intro. Your energy level is off the rails. So great to be here. Thanks so much for having me today. It's an honor. Good to see you, friend.
Well, great to see you too. I miss seeing you at different conferences all around the country. Yes. Watching you speak at some of the biggest conferences and someone that has always been so helpful to me and so helpful to so many people that we know. So thanks for doing this, and I'm just excited. How we originally met was through my partners at Rubicon Talent, who you've known for a long time.
Yes, Dave and Raskin. I mean, they're both, again, good friends, and continue to talk to them and work with them on some different collaborations here and there. But so happy to see their shop take off as well.
Well, it's exciting to see what they've done. It's exciting to see all the things that you've done and the team that you've put together. But one of the things that we do on our 76 Capital Leadership Series is we try to go back, take our audience back to share with our great guests all the things that you've done in your life, and take it really from the beginning, where you grew up. You talked about earlier, you grew up in Chicago, but like, I want to hear your story and really what makes you.
God, I mean, I think it's having four brothers. Growing up Irish Catholic in Chicago was certainly a big aspect of my development as a human being. I grew up in Lake Forest, Illinois, outside of Chicago, and what was amazing was we actually it still is the practice location for the Chicago Bears. So I grew up riding my Schwinn bike over to watch the Bears practice at Hallis Hall, and was hooked on sports from the get-go. I participated in sports. My brothers and I were always out in the backyard kicking something or hitting something and having tinker toy wars. If anyone remembers what a tinker toy was, we used to fill them with sand and throw them at each other. It was good times, good family times. But I think when you grow up in a big family, you learn how that you have to speak up or you won't be heard. And I also feel like, just growing up in an Irish Catholic household, you learn to be self-reliant, and you learn to be confident, and also to kind of operate on your own. So I think that was a big part of my mom and dad were, again, my mother's still with us, my father passed, but I owe a great deal of my success to them because they really, as they sat around the table telling the boys they could be anything they wanted when they grew up, they didn't treat me differently. So I grew up with four boys and was kind of raised like a boy. I hate to say it that way. It sounds so terrible. But I was raised to, my father would say, someday you should go to the London School of Economics. And I'm like, oh, okay. That sounds interesting. I think I was 10. But when you speak to a child like that and tell them of all the things that they can do, it really broadens their horizons quickly to aim high and maybe go outside of their comfort zone sooner.
That's amazing that you were able to have, such great advice coming, as you said, at the dinner table, around the, with your parents. That's something that's incredibly special. You talked about, being in Chicago, going and watching the Bears practice. Were you a full-on Chicago sports fan, or are you still a Chicago sports fan?
It's an interesting challenge because people think that because I worked at the Eagles for 10 years, that I'm a diehard Eagle fan. And I certainly am an Eagle fan. I'm raising two Eagle fans. My sons are middle schoolers and are totally devout Eagle fans. My husband's actually a Redskins fan. He grew up a Redskins fan. We've converted him to an Eagle fan.
Or as we call them, the football team,
Yes, now, again, yes. Still getting used to that. I'm struggling. But no, I grew up a Bears fan, and I was pretty happy when I saw Nikki Sixx become a Bear. And I grew up going to Bears games. My family was in banking when I was a child. So we had these killer tickets on the 50-yard line. And I would actually try to start a fight with my brothers and have them beat each other up on Friday, Saturday. So my father would be so angry. He'd finally say, forget it. None of you are going to the game. I'm taking your sister. And so some of my greatest sports memories are sitting next to my dad drinking hot chocolate at Soldiers Field when it was, the original Soldiers Field, watching the Bears, watching guys like Ron Rivera and Leslie Frazier play the game, Walter Payton. I cried the day Walter Payton died. I'm sure a lot of Chicagoans did. It was such a sad way to lose him. But I think that's where, it was so evident to me, the power of sports. But at the time, I had no idea. And again, I was a child, but I had no idea you could actually have a career in sports besides being a coach in operations, things like that. You don't learn about the business side of sports as a child. You just learn about what it's like to be a fan and meet a hero and connect with wins and losses.
Well, it's really interesting how your career path went, right? I mean, you went to St. Lawrence University. You were, and I think it's awesome. I mean, this is one of the things that I think that I try to share with so many young people today who say to me, I want to be in sports. I want to be in sports, and they're like, should I? What's the right sports program that I should study? And I say, well, slow down.
Exactly.
I say, slow down. Because you had this amazing double major in government and Spanish, right? So talk about that and kind of that journey.
Yeah. I mean, it was a journey too. I started speaking, learning Spanish when I was in Lake Forest Country Day School, continued that at the Madeira School outside of Washington, D.C., and it was very much global minded at that point, in being in Washington for high school. So I knew I wanted to work internationally, And so Spanish was the track that I decided to pursue. Tried French and Spanish at the same time. I could not do that. I'd like blend the languages into Franish, I guess we'd call it, but it was not a pretty language I was speaking when I'd mixed the two. So I went to St. Lawrence, was a double major in government Spanish, wanted to actually go into the foreign service, believe it or not, or do international law. And as luck would have it, we were going to have a graduation speaker at St. Lawrence, and the head of the senior class came to me and said, we have some people that want to protest graduation. And I said, why? And they said, well, they don't think he's going to speak to the class as a whole. He's a business guy. And I was like, well, who is this guy? And they said, well, his name is Mark McCormick, and he has a sports marketing agency called International Management Group. And I'm like, what is a sports marketing agency? What is that about? So they said, well, you're going to go find out because you're defending him in front of these 7 people that want to protest graduation, and the dean and the president of the school. And I said, okay. So I went to the stacks and read old copies of Sports Illustrated. The internet did not exist. It's so pathetic to say that, but it was back in the early 90s. Al Gore hadn't invented it yet. And so, I'm going through old articles about, Mark McCormick signing Arnold Palmer and Gary Player and all of these legends of the game, and Rod Laver. And so I defended the fact that he wrote What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, which I still tell people to this day is a must read. It speaks so much about the business outside of, the knowledge base, but just the networking and connections. I mean, Wayne, honestly, you and he are very similar in how you networked, if you will. So with Mr. McCormick, people decided not to protest graduation. And that's how I ended up starting to kind of research the sports marketing world. And I basically stalked Mr. McCormick for almost a year through his assistant, Lori Roggenberg in Cleveland. And I'd call her like once a week. And I'd say, by the way, I'm bilingual. So if there's any opportunities in Latin America or Spain, I would love an opportunity. So I think when, you go back to what you tell, when kids want to, and I got an internship in 1992, I started with them. And I actually got the job while I was living in Japan, teaching English, basically killing time, but I thought it'd be cool to live in Japan. And I was teaching English to Japanese executives, which was kind of like my MBA in business, because I was meeting with these extremely intelligent scientists and business leaders. And so I'd sit and ask them questions, and then I'd go to Thunderbird, which is International School of Management, had Thunderbird Thursdays, and they do it globally. And it was at Trader Vic's in Osaka. And I met a bunch of people, and they were like, come to our Thunderbird Thursdays and we'll drink drinks at Trader Vic's in the Omni. I think it was the New Otani Hotel off of Osaka Jokoen. And so I kind of I'll call it self-taught in business and at least the politics of how to navigate. So I know that's a long way to get to. I was a government Spanish major and I ended in sports. But I think you have to kind of be open to where your major might lead you. And, again, I was going to be a lobbyist or an attorney. At one point, I was going to interview with the CIA. And my advisor pulled me aside and he said, you can't do it. I said, why? What do you mean I can't do it? I got mad. Because no. Because if you interview, you're going to get this job. And then you're going to go live in Latin America. And I just want to make sure, do you want a family someday? Do you want a life? And I was like, well, yeah, why can't I have both? He said, it's just complicated in the CIA. Once you're in the CIA, you're always in the CIA. And I was like, oh, that kind of freaked me out. So I was like, we'll take our name off that list. I have some friends from St. Lawrence who have always worked for chemical companies overseas. And I'm like, they're totally CIA. So
that's really funny. We have a friend, we always joke that we don't know what he really does, but we always joke that he's in the CIA, but we're not sure if it's true or not. But
he's totally CIA.
I'll mention that to him. Well, Molly, it's really awesome to have you on our 76 Capital Leadership Series. We have Molly Arbogast, the president and CEO of POV Sports Marketing, as our guest today. And Molly, I think one of the really interesting things about, your career is, all the different companies that you've and brands and teams that you've worked with leading up to where you started your own business. So maybe talk about some of the different, IMG to some of the other things that you've done.
Yeah, I started early in the 90s with IMG, and I was hired to be part of an intern corps of 3 who was going to be booking meetings for, an all-star team, looking back at the people they had us booking meetings for. Mr. McCormick sent the best in the country, the world, down to Latin America to have initial meetings with every different type of business sector. And so I was on the team that helped book the meetings, and I'd call and say, "Buenos días, estoy llamando de IMG, de Cleveland, and tal y tal," and whatever. So I'd book the meetings. And so at the end of the intern program, a couple other folks got positions in tennis or golf representation, things like that. One person moved on. And they said, "Would you like to stay on and work in Latin America?" And I said, "Oh my God, it'd be great." So I lived in Cleveland, New York, and then helped open an office in Miami. But it was very entrepreneurial, and I kind of liked structure, that the idea of having to build things from the ground up. I loved my time at IMG. Again, got to work for some very generous people. And I say generous in terms of their ability and willingness to share knowledge and teach me. And I think that's the greatest gift that you can give someone who's working for you, is the ability to, sometimes maybe let them fail a little bit, because failure hurts, but it's memorable and it makes you better. But I, again, got to work for some of the best and the best of the best in the business. Great guy named Ted Ashford. He runs Ashford Capital now in Delaware. Todd McCormick, Mr. McCormick's son. I got to work with his daughter, Leslie, who was in the Paris office. We did some things with some Parisian companies. And so it was, again, a great experience. Bob Kane, again, was one of my bosses at one point. And again, we're always very generous with teaching me how to be the best sports marketer or sports marketing sales executive I could be. After IMG, I moved to the Detroit Pistons, got a chance to work for Tom Wilson, Dan Hauser, Greg Myford, Andy Appleby, again, guys who just were so generous. As growing up as one of five in a household full of boys, I didn't realize at the time that it was a big deal that they were hiring a woman. They never said, "Oh, by the way, you're the first woman we ever hired," but it became pretty clear to me that I was. And I took a great deal of responsibility. I knew the responsibility that came with that to, always be working a little harder, conduct myself professionally at all times, never lose sense of where I am, and not, again, ever having it reflect poorly on the company or the fact that a woman can do this job and do this job really well. I had an opportunity to go from, I'm sorry.
No, it's totally fine. So when working with the Detroit Pistons, NBA team,
loved it.
What were some of the things that you did? What were some of your roles and responsibilities there?
Gosh, so I was a corporate, I was senior account executive. So I was doing sponsorship sales with everyone from the company that we did our trade deal with for all of our mobile, like our walkie-talkies, like it was back in the day where you had walkies, and to the Fannie Mae Foundation and the home team program, which the Pistons had never been a Fannie Mae home team. And I was able to negotiate that deal out of Washington, which was amazing. And then we were renovating and renewing houses throughout the Detroit area, which back in the day, Detroit's come a long way from when I was there. It was really exciting to just be able to, get your hands dirty and really do great things with players out in the community. As I was selling sponsorship, what was funny was the internet was obviously alive and well, and this is 1996, but a lot of teams, their sites were continuing to develop. And so I said, "I'll do it." And so I actually designed 6 websites for Palace Sports and Entertainment, one for every venue, to fall under palacenet.com with the graphic design department at the Palace. And, it was funny because there weren't a lot of guides back in the day of saying, well, what would be important to fans? They might need a stadium map, arena map. They might need a seating chart at Pine Knob Music Theater. It's now DTE Music Theater. But putting together all the guest services types things that we needed to be able to put into the website. So that's where, again, you start to kind of multitask, and then you get busy and people give you more and more and more because you're good at getting things done. So when you leave an organization, people are like, "What do you mean you did that? You were a sales executive." And you're like, "Yeah, but I was trying to figure out how to sell more stuff." So if I was involved with helping to develop and design the websites, I actually could generate more inventory for the sales team to sell. And then we all got to sell more and we all made more money. So while that might sound self-serving, it was the beginning of integrating digital advertising into websites. And we had flip phones. We weren't at the smartphone phase yet. So, and I don't even know if we had text. Did we have text in the late 90s? I don't think so. So again, it was kind of fun to be in the middle of innovation, which again made you kind of uncomfortable, but you learn what you can do and can't do easily when you're trying to redesign a site.
Wow, incredible. Then from there, if I understand correctly, you went to work with the NBA and WNBA. What was that experience?
Actually, that was Eagles came first.
Oh, Eagles first, okay.
So New Year's Eve came 2000, and I was like in Michigan, and I'm like, I got to get out of this place. I love Michigan. I love my time there. But I was like, was hoping Mr. Wonderful was going to come along. Well, he wasn't in Michigan. So I wanted to move back east, which is where my real passion was. And I had an opportunity to meet a gentleman named Len Komorowski. The funny story is he was the SVP at the time at the Philadelphia Eagles. The funny story is a gentleman named Andy Appleby had introduced me to Len because I wanted to work at the Denver Broncos. I wanted to be a director out there because I thought, well, if I don't meet Mr. Wonderful, I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to buy a condo at Vail or Beaver Creek, and I'll just ski and I'll have fun. And it'll be fun. It'll be great. I would miss having those kids, but I'm not going to marry the wrong guy. So I called Len to get help getting a job at the Broncos, and he came back from Super Bowl in 2000. It was January 2001 or January 2000. And he said, Ron Skatarzak is leaving us to go to Hoop TV, and ultimately he's now at the Garden. How would you like to work for us? And I didn't want to be rude. So I was like, oh, that would be lovely. And I was like, I've never even been to Philadelphia. So I, had to research the Eagles. And I was like, this guy, Donovan McNabb, he'll hopefully come along. And, Doug Peterson was the quarterback. So again, it's taking us kind of full circle. But I came to Philadelphia and I just kind of had this instant vibe to the city. I was like, this place is great. It's got the grit that makes Philly amazing, but it's got the arts and sophistication that you want. But I like the balance. As a Chicago girl, we had both. And so Philly kind of had the same thing. It was, going into the neighborhoods in Philly is what makes Philly amazing. Finding that cheesesteak shop that's kind of off the beaten path, or that really good place that makes empanadas or ribs. You're like, oh my God, best in the world. Everyone should come here. But that's what makes Philly amazing. So I just fell in love with Philly and accepted the job and moved to Philadelphia. So I was with Philadelphia Eagles for 6 years, and then was headhunted by Donna Orender and Kristen Bernert, actually, at the time, to come up to the NBA to create a new sales group for the WNBA so it could be sold on its own. And Adam Silver at the time was the deputy commissioner of the league. And I'd interviewed with he and Donna, and they both were like, let's do it. So I commuted to New York from Philadelphia. The initial plan was going to be in New York 2 to 3 days a week. It quickly became 5. And I was dating my husband and didn't want to move to New York because I knew I'd found the guy. I found the one. He was in Philly. And so I was commuting up to New York, and again, an amazing time, and had a chance to work with David Stern. And he was very good to me. He's a tough guy, but he was never, he was always very fair with me. And he was always, because I tend to be, we'll call it blunt, extremely direct. And I think he liked that I wasn't going to sugarcoat things. And so I remember one day I was sitting in a meeting with he and Donna were kind of squared up talking. And he physically picked up his chair and turned to me and leaned in and said, so Molly, what's going to go happen with that deal? And I said, barring, and again, it was post 9/11. So we thought about these things. It was a little closer. I said, barring something like a 9/11 occurring, this deal will get signed and we'll move forward. And he was like, okay, great. Thank you. I just needed someone to say it was going to get done. And Donna would laugh when she heard that. She'd go, I remember that meeting, because Donna was like, well, but again, you're cautious because you don't want to get yelled at by David, God rest his soul. But he was tough, but I learned a lot from him as well. So pleasure and honor to work for him.
Wow. I mean, I was talking with Donna a few months ago, and we were talking about a couple different David Stern stories. Incredible. And we have yet to bring Donna onto the 76 Capital Leadership Series, but we're going to.
You have to.
She's great. I mean, her stories are amazing, and all the things that she's done in her career and what she's doing now, trying to make this world a much better place. So appreciate that. And that's what we're all about. And that's why we're so excited to have you, Molly, on our 76 Capital Leadership Series and talk about all the things that you've done in your career. And now as president and CEO of POV Sports Marketing, and, the great clients that you're working with and helping them really get their message, their brand, their products out into the world. So I'd love to hear, about, POV and, how you started it and where it is today and what you see as the future.
You bet. I mean, I think POV was always, something in the back of my mind, probably post when I left Learfield and went back to the Eagles. I kind of was had been selling for almost 20 22 years at the time, 21 years. And I knew that at some point I wanted to try to move to the other side of the table and help with the buying. And so as, you know, my time with the Philadelphia Eagles came kind of to the close, I said, now it's the times now. And so I took a couple months off, and what was great to kind of reconnect with my family. What's one thing that's hard is, I have an amazing husband, Craig Arbogast, and two wonderful little boys, Jack and Luke, who are now 12 and 13. My 13-year-old is now taller than me, which isn't hard. I'm 5'3". But I think one thing that, you want to be able to create that work-life balance that really allows you to be very present in your life. I remember your children's lives. I remember when people would tell me when my kids were little, it was, oh, wait till they're older. They really need you then. And I'm thinking, if I leave this 2-year-old in a room alone, they're going to, potentially die. So I think he needs me now. But the point is, they do need you actually more. And I know, Wayne, you've got your kids as well, and you appreciate the need to be just present in their lives so that they know that they can count on you. The idea of creating POV, it was the right time. It was the right place. I had a lot of people reaching out saying, so are you ready for a project? Are you ready for work? And I'm like, no, I'm going to take 3 months off the summer to reset, create all the different business structure, and then launch. And so I was very fortunate to have revenue on day one, which was great, with some different projects with Inside Lacrosse, and First Trust Bank was our first client. And so I structured the company basically to do two things. We have a brand division, which basically works with brands on brand consulting, where we do strategy, deal negotiation, deal management, and all the activation planning, where we actually end up becoming the hub of the wheel, if you will, where we'll work with the creative agency. We just did a shoot with a 76er the other day for one of our clients, where we were helping. I mean, I was buying peanut butter one night, right, to make some things it's clearly our bread partner. But it was interesting because, you do what you have to do. I needed to get sugar-free jelly. I went out and I got sugar-free jelly because it's brighter colors, so it shows better on camera. Because our friends from TPN in Chicago, they couldn't travel because there were some restrictions, and they had a producer come down from New York. But you end up kind of becoming the hub of that wheel, because we're very good at sports marketing. But when we don't have a skill set, we work with the agencies that brand will bring in to work on digital, social execution, creative execution, public relations, things like that. So we play well in the sandbox. We're pleased to work on Wawa's business. We work very closely with their agency Bounteous on digital, social, and Harmelin, who handles media. We work with Stroman Breads and some other regional bread brands for Bimbo Bakeries, which is headquartered here in Philadelphia. And, we just continue to really grow our offering. As I said, First Trust Bank was our first client. This was a very interesting year because we were actually ready to announce the Philadelphia Eagles' new official bank deal on March 11th. Well, the world changed on March 11th. And when the market started to react on March 9th, we said, okay, time out, pause. And we needed to relook at year one. So year one ended up looking a little different than the rest of the deal because we needed to be cautious and we didn't know what was coming. So again, our job is to advocate for our clients and step up and help them in anything that they may need to be doing. And be again a good teammate to not just the brands and their marketing departments, but also their other agency partners. Because if it's good for the client, who cares who did the work? The client knows, and the client likes to see agencies working and collaborating well together to solve the problems to further their brand mission, not necessarily an agency's mission. So that's the brand side. And on the property side of the business,
before we leave the brand, real quick,
sorry,
Molly, I want to jump in real quickly. So you're talking about all these amazing brands that you work with, and we're very fortunate with our 76 Capital Leadership Series that our distribution is not only just all across the U.S. but globally. And some people may not know Wawa.
Oh, Wawa.
Maybe share with our audience what Wawa is, and how ingrained in the culture of the greater Philadelphia area and now way beyond. But what is Wawa? And WAWA?
I know. It means goose in an Indian dialect. Wawa is a family-owned business that started as a little dairy and then became a sandwich C-store type shop. And over time has expanded into some of the best coffee you'll ever have is at Wawa. Milkshakes, smoothies, Their quinoa and kale salad is a go-to for me. I love that. But the hoagie is a sub for those of you who don't live in the Philadelphia area. But they call their product hoagies throughout their system. So when you buy a hoagie in Miami, it's a hoagie. It's not called a sub. It's not called a grinder. It's not called a sandwich. And so, again, it's this amazing organization that was born outside of Philadelphia in Wawa, PA, and has grown into 6 states across the Eastern Seaboard and continues to grow. Tremendous leadership with Chris Geisens and the team he's built with Jim Morey, Todd Miller, Steve Gamble, who oversee the marketing initiatives. I mean, gosh, I could go on with the amazing people we work there. We're so blessed to get to work with them. We're entering our 3rd year of working with Wawa, and we just keep, we're not missing a beat. 2020 was an interesting year. We had some things on deck that we decided to pause just because we felt the timing was bad with the pandemic. But Wawa is it's a bit of a cult following in Philadelphia. What's interesting is when we did the Scarborough data initially in Philadelphia to overlay how many people had walked into a Wawa in the last 7 days, and whether they were Phillies, Flyers, all the different teams, Eagle fans, the lines are almost perfect match, which I've never seen in my entire sports career. That's how much penetration Wawa has in this market. And now they're looking to continue to grow in North Jersey, the Southern Mid-Atlantic, in that DC-Baltimore corridor. They're proud partners of the Baltimore Ravens. And now into Florida has really exploded for them in the past several years and is a key priority market. They partnered with our friends at Coca-Cola to present the Wawa 250 at Daytona last August, powered by Coke Zero Sugar. And again, it's a great way for them to connect with their consumers throughout the corridor, if you will. But I think one of the biggest challenges is some people who are new to the brand say, well, it's a gas station. I'm like, no, it started as a sandwich shop and a dairy. And so the food is what draws you into Wawa. If you happen to be able to fill up the tank while you're there, that's great. But the food is what the driver is in Philadelphia and throughout the system.
It's funny you say that. My daughter, as you know, Sabrina, goes to college down in Florida, in Orlando, outside of Orlando.
Oh, lots of Wawas in Orlando.
And one of her friends kept saying, "Why do you like this Wawa thing so much?" And she's like, "It's just a gas station." And my daughter's like, "No, it's not." I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
And now all of a sudden, all of her friends, they love Wawa down there. And now they realize everything that you can have. And like, wow, this is so much better than 7-Eleven. This is so much better than any other convenience store that's out there. So
our roots are in food. I mean, the roots of Wawa are in food. And gas was added much, much later into the system. I mean, I remember going into Wawa's when you had to pay in cash and there weren't gas stations. I mean, when I first moved to Philadelphia, I'm like, what do you mean you don't take credit cards? Like it was a thing. But again, it's just such a Philly thing. It's where I was introduced to the Philly pretzel. I was like, why does everyone, I remember saying to someone, we were in the belly of the Veterans Stadium. It was my first week. And I said, where do you guys go for lunch? Because there's no place around the vet unless you go to the cafe and the truck stop, which I was like, probably not the best choice as a woman to walk into there alone. So they were like, well, you go to Wawa and get a pretzel and a water ice. And I'm like, okay, why would I eat pretzel? What is water ice? They're like, oh my God. I'm like, we call that Italian ice in Chicago. So again, it's really a rite of passage. And once you've had the product, you're like, this is really good. And it's made to order and it's fresh. All the bread's baked in the store. So it's Amoroso's bread, which is another Philly staple. But, it's a great brand and we're honored to work on it. See, we even stuck Wawa in there when we did our picture for Game Changers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we even call it water ice instead of water ice.
Water. I know. I don't get I know. That's the water. That's the long Chicago A I've still got in there.
Well, you were going through some of the other things that you do at POV Marketing. We'd love to hear that as well.
Yeah. So, when I first started out, a lot of folks called and said, would you sell for us? And I had some beautiful job offers from some people I just adore. And I said, some people start a consultancy because it's kind of a rest stop on the way to their next big gig. And I said, no, I'm starting a shop and we just turned 4 and this isn't a rest stop. This is what I want to do for the rest of my career because I'm a marketing geek. I love sitting in marketing meetings, getting the brand analysis that's just come back on something for Wawa, the repositioning of the brand. I love that, because then I can be a better sports marketer, because I really understand what we're trying to achieve here. And the teams like it because we can communicate better. But we had a lot of opportunities where people were calling and saying, can you sell for us? And I said, no, but I'd love to teach people on your team how to do it. And so what we did is we launched Sponsorship Edge, powered by POV Sports Marketing. And that's our property suite of services. And so what we do is we will go into a venue like ASM Global, formerly SMG and AEG merged to form ASM Global, I guess, gosh, it was last fall. So we did a lot of work for SMG before, where we were going into mid-market venues in Wichita, Sioux Falls, Manchester, New Hampshire, Charleston, Peoria. I get to go to all these exotic places, but I will tell you, when you go to these places, you get a real sense of what marketing is like in mid-America. And so what we try to do is we work with those types of venues across the country to help them understand what their sponsorship sales strategy should be. I basically, with my team, we build their sponsorship group, their sponsorship model, their sponsorship assets, their deck, their rate card. We do the valuation of all their assets. We try to make them successful, because I would rather teach a man or a woman how to fish in Peoria so that they can be successful long-term at a venue than to have them outsourced to me. Because at the end of the day, I don't belong to the Rotary Club, and I don't belong to Kiwanis Club, and I'm not a member of the Beef Association. They live there. They're going to be more successful. They just need some coaching. And so we find that when we do something called a venue market and revenue report for these venues, we then stay on for 6 months as a sales advisor, almost like a sales manager. They'll see a 30% lift in new revenue and upsells within 6 to 8 months. And the aha moment when the seller, who probably isn't a traditional seller, they tend to be like the director of communications and the head of sponsorship. Once they close that first big 6-figure deal, they're like, oh my God, that was amazing. Because a lot of times, legends, we have a great deal of respect for legends. Sometimes SMG will bring us in after a venue's already been sold by Legend and it's probably 4 or 5 years old, because that's when the local sellers are starting to come up on renewals. And they just don't necessarily have the background and the skill set to know what to do. And so we've taken Sponsorship Edge even beyond the SMG, now ASM Global buildings, who we continue to work with. We did the Pennsylvania Convention Center last fall and put a VMR model, sponsorship model together for them should they decide to pursue that track. We've done work for USA Gymnastics. We did sponsorship strategy for them. And have also worked with some developers to work on venues that aren't even constructed yet, of just what the opportunity horizon is for sponsorship revenue, how to structure it, package it, and maximize assets. So that's where I put my old sales hat on from the WNBA and the Pistons and the Eagles and Learfield, to be able to say, what can you sell when you've got these buildings, and how do you make sure that you're never really sold out?
Wow. When you think about the world that we're living in today and how important social media is from a sales perspective, marketing perspective, sponsorship side of things, how have you integrated that into all the things that you do at POV Sports Marketing?
It's everything. It's everything. I mean, I'll be honest, when we renewed the Philadelphia Eagles Wawa deal recently, there's not one sign in the building. It's all digital social. Because Wawa doesn't necessarily need to build brand in Philadelphia. Wawa needs to connect with their consumers and create relevance. And Wawa's a fun brand. Wawa wants to have fun and connect with its customers in a relevant way. And that's via digital and social. So we had turned that ship in Philadelphia with that specific partnership even before COVID, because it was a better strategy for the market. Whereas in other markets, we do have signage and we build brand, because in Washington, we need to elevate our profile. We partner with the Capitals there, great organization, love working with them. And they've got dashers and second period replays and things like that. But digital and social are still how we connect with that one-to-one connection in every one of our partnerships. I can't imagine signing a deal, and we say this to our property clients as well. Even these venues in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, has as many social followers as the local newspaper and local networks, which is in these mid-markets of 200, 300,000 population. That's a big deal. And I'm like, you've got to activate these, because these are tremendous resources you have, and a way to connect and personalize a connection with a consumer, to draw them into the venue or draw them into a store. And so again, the messaging is the same. Digital and social is a must in everything we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think one of the things that we certainly see that across sports today, just the value of whether it's an athlete or a brand, their social capital is just incredibly
You
important,
bet.
and can really have an impact on that on the earnings of that brand, of that person, of that athlete. I mean, it's really amazing. So Molly, as we sort of wind down here on our 76 Capital Leadership Series, and it's been great to have you on the show. And
Thank
I feel
you.
like we could talk all day, and your experience is amazing. And one of the things that we really enjoy hearing from some of the leaders in the sports industry, and really getting their take on what's going on in the world today, and truly how we, and as sports business leaders and executives, how can we really help make this world a better place through all the things that we do? I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, what's interesting is everybody else who doesn't work in sports, they go to work all day, and their break in the day is what we do. It's sports, it's music. And so they race home to be able to watch a game. And so us continuing to deliver that entertainment experience, because it doesn't really matter the shape of the ball or the stick or the puck, or, it's all about creating a break for everybody from the madness. I mean, I think right now in America, anxiety is a real issue for a lot of people, depression, people who are isolated. I'm thrilled that I have a husband and 2 kids. It's like, I'm never alone. That has good things and bad things, right? But I think there's times where I'm like, could you all go somewhere? But it's sports is recess. I think I've said before, sports is kind of recess for the soul for adults, and even young people who just, whether you're playing it or watching it, it gives you a break from your reality. And I think that sports marketers need to continue to create ways for fans to understand and connect with their teams and the players from those teams, to just understand that some of these players are going through what you're going through. And I hate to say misery loves company, but sometimes it's a matter of all of us understanding we are in this together. There is an end in sight with the so happy as we sit here on November 19th to say we've got a vaccine coming from 2 major pharmaceutical companies, which is hopefully going to put us back into large fan capacities and venues in Q3, Q4 of next year. Again, it all depend on production and distribution of the vaccine. But I think that brands have really stepped up. I know we've done some interesting things with Stroman Bread, a regional bread company out of Bimbo here in Philadelphia back in April, where we knew all the kids were home and the parents were working from home and everyone was trying to do distance learning here in Philadelphia. And what we were hearing a lot about and listening on social was a lot about parents wanting to go to recess. And so taking their kids out in the driveway to shoot hoops or throw a lacrosse ball around or kick a soccer ball or go for a bike ride. I mean, bike sales, you couldn't find a bicycle in Philadelphia in April. And so we said, why don't we get fans to show us how they're celebrating recess? We're a bread company. We want to be at the island. More parents are feeding their kids sandwiches at home because they're home. School is now cafeteria, is the kitchen. And so we created 76ers Hoops at Home, where fans could upload their content of them wearing their Sixer gear, showing their Sixer love, and showing us their moves. And it was the cutest thing you've ever seen. I mean, little kids, big kids, some adults, we're just having fun. And I think as long as we can continue as marketers to put it out there for fans to consume as they see fit, I think, again, we're the recess for them, and they need that break because, there's people losing jobs, people who've been unemployed for a while here, and we're just their break from their reality. And I think we need to give them reasons to have hope and be cheerful, and have some fun.
Molly, that's amazing. And those are some great words of wisdom and just how we just really need to think about, the world that we're in today, and how lucky we are to be in the sports industry and do all the things that we get to go do. So thank you so much for joining our show.
Thank you.
Please, you're welcome. And please follow Molly Arbogast, President and CEO of POV Sports Marketing. Follow her on Twitter at Molly Arbogast1, as well as on POV Sports Marketing at POV Sports MKTG on Twitter for POV Sports Marketing. You will you got to check out all the things that they're doing with all the great brands, all the clients that they have. And if you are somebody that needs to really speak to an expert within the sports marketing world, Molly's your person. Give her a call, reach out to her. I'm just really honored and so happy that we had an opportunity to have you on the show. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too. Stay safe out there, and you can catch all our 76 Capital Leadership podcasts on, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, all the different platforms that are out there, as well as our video series on YouTube. Thanks to our producer, James Santor, at James Santor. Check him out on Twitter, and also all the things that we have on our 76 Capital Leadership series. Please find all the things that we do on our social media networks. So thanks to everybody for listening and watching, and hope that everyone has a great day.